Hello, beautiful people. So my name's Lisa Yaboa, and this is our fourth episode of Talks with God. And today I'm going to keep it fairly simple. I want to talk about what does it look like to live the life that you have been called to live. The older I have gotten, the more I realize that it takes courage to live your life. When I turned 40, I decided that I was no longer going to perform life, I was going to live life, which meant that I wasn't going to edit and tweak and always come up with caveats and footnotes for my existence, that I was going to learn how to really occupy every single one of the days that God has given me. A lot of my life has actually been spent doing what other people wanted me to do, being the person that other people wanted me to be. And 40 was like this moment, like this shift where I recognized now I'm in the second half of life and I can either keep on doing the things that other people want me to do, wearing the things that other people want me to wear, or I can live my life. My life. At age 42, I decided to get my first tattoo, and it's actually the jail numbers that Rosa Parks held up after she had been put in jail when she refused to get up from her seat in Montgomery, Alabama. And it was important for me to have this kind of sign, this symbol for me to look at every single day, to remind myself not to play it small in my own life, that I would also be courageous in my life. Because there are a lot of factors and forces kind of beyond me that are always trying to tell me what I need to do, how I need to show up, what I need to wear, what my hair needs to look like, who I need to be, how I need to talk. And this reminder is like, Lisa, be courageous enough to live your life. Here's the thing, though. Even beyond those outside forces, because there's such a thing called comparison, there are moments when I can look to the left and to the right, and if I am not careful, I can begin to police my own life and begin to police myself, where I begin to wonder, is that the standard? Is that the standard? Am I living up to it? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? What does my lane look like right now? And so what I want to just talk about in this episode is how we might leverage courage in our communities, in our sister circles, that we choose to live the lives that we have been called to live. Not the life that somebody else wants us to live, not the image of ourselves that we think we need to lean into, but being our most authentic selves. And so with the bodies that we've been given, with the hairstyle that we are rocking, with the way of being that we have in the world, that we would show up fully for whatever it is that we believe is our life, that we would occupy our lives well. I look forward to having this conversation with my sisters, and I look forward to having this conversation with you.
Hello, welcome to our fourth episode of Talks with God, however you want to say it. I am Margaret A. Brunson, and I am one of the 5 wonderful people that make up our God grown-ass women's delegation, because we grown. And so I want to introduce my other grown-ass women. So here we have Reverend Dr. Donna Coltrane Battle. We have the Right Reverend Shalise Overy.
Hey, y'all.
And we have the Right Reverend Angela Whitenhill Shields. And last but not least, our leader, our facilitator for today, the Right Reverend Lisa Yaboa.
Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lisa.
Delightful. By this point in time, hopefully you've watched my introductory video and you notice I'm wearing the exact same outfit because, consistency matters. And I want to just kind of get into this. It's kind of a pretty I don't want to say in some ways simple, but also profound topic about what does it look like for us to occupy our lives. And I think it's important for me to share with you what kind of was like creating a holy restlessness in me to even want to move in this particular direction. Our last episode, my dear friend, Dr. Margaret Antoinette Brunson, talked about what it is to like, to say your name and to claim your name, to like understand your identity. And there was something about that conversation as we were all talking with each other that I realized that it's one thing to say your name or for someone to name you rightly. It's another thing to live out of your name. And to live out of your name is to actually like, I think it's maybe the more courageous move to take the consonants and vowels and then to make them into a life that looks compelling to other people. The second thing that kind of created this holy restlessness was actually a conversation I was having with Margaret one day. And I was telling her how I wanted to like, you know, for me, my best life would be sitting on my front porch wearing a bathing suit, eating ice cream. And then she talked about how there's a little girl in her neighborhood who wears a bathing suit, you know, who rides up and down the road on a scooter. And I was like, that's my life. Like, that is who I want to be. But then we like pivoted in our conversation from laughing to realizing that if I told most people that that's how I want to show up in the world, or even if that's how I showed up in the world, for some people, even if they say they're the do you kind of person, would probably see either my freedom as a threat to their own lives, or want to like constrain me in the way that I live my life. And so I started to kind of think about how living life can feel like a threat to other people. The last two things is that among our beautiful sisterhood, some of us have joined the 40 Club. You can put your hands up. Yes, and there's something about turning 40, I have found that women, Black women in particular, start to recognize there's just no time to like perform. You know, it's this season of like living your most authentic life. And then the last thing is just out of my own pastoral authority, I watch a lot of people backpedal on the life that I know that they've been called to live, and to do a lot of performing of life and not living of life. So today I just really want to talk about what does it look like for us to live the lives that we have been called to live, to love the bodies that we've been given, to love the stories that we're living into, to love the vocations that we've been called into. And as simple as it seems to live an authentic life, so many of us won't. So yeah, we want to talk about that. So I'm going to just throw out this question to my sisters, and that is, what does it look like for you, and what does it feel like for you to live authentically, to be yourself?
This just brings me so much joy, Lisa. I appreciate you for this. I don't mind jumping in. Just even the question made me happy, and not forced or performative, but like genuinely just like, yes. So excitement. I'm not stressed out. I'm balanced. I'm chill. So I overwork myself. And whenever I get to that point, I'm not being my authentic self. So much more, I'm not a relaxed person, but I think when I am relaxed, I'm more myself, which is ironic. So I was just thinking about this idea of freedom. I know people talk about freedom a lot, but just really free I don't mediate my words. So when I'm much more not free, I'm very conscious of my words. I'm very like prepared. And I think that's somebody's authentic self, and that's beautiful. When I'm free, it's just like, you know, and it flows and it feels good, and I'm not worried if it doesn't. And so there's a relaxedness, there's a freeness, there's a balance. Definitely not tired, not stressed out.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say that me living my most authentic self in this particular season of my life, like what I've come to learn about myself is being able to wake up every day and let that day be that day, right? So what I'm feeling, let it be that day. You know, what color lipstick I feel like putting on, what clothes I feel like putting on, what mood I feel like being in, being able to do that, but also being free to have all those things take up space, right? So making sure that I am okay taking up space. Like I feel like a lot of my earlier years not really knowing how I should take up space or trying to get permission to take up space in a certain way. And I think I've just lived enough now, been through enough struggle, and been through my own processes, whether that is through spiritual processes, therapy, conversations, relationship, like doing this other work, to come to really figure out what it means to live a life of love rather than fear. And so it's been about moving away from this sense of fear, how people view me being different from people. And I think of a line in a song by Jadena, where he says, look at how God made the sky big enough for all the birds to fly. And just coming to this understanding that I'm a bird in the sky and that there's plenty of space for me. My sister Margaret, right here, right, once said to us that even if what you are doing and what you are called to do and who you are is similar to someone else, it doesn't change the fact that how you do it is unique, and how you create and take up space and serve is very unique. And so you don't hold that back just because other people are doing similar things. And so I think it's a hodgepodge of all of that. Like, how I've come to not be afraid to just be where I am right here, right now. And not have to make excuses or to apologize just for being who I am.
Beautiful. Man.
Yeah, I think I want to answer this question. So I know we're going to probably get into this, but I think back to like my childhood and how, growing up in the 90s, there was just a certain look that was more acceptable. And I think I spent pretty much my entire childhood like wishing I looked this different way, wishing that my hair were different, my skin were different, my body was different. And I think that probably trickled into my adulthood. But I think, to your point, Lisa, like turning 40, something within that year of turning 40, it was like, what do you want, Margaret? Like, what do you want? Who are you? And what do you want based on like who you are? And I think for me, living authentically at this point in my life means accepting the fact that, one, I may have some views about things that are not typical for, maybe a woman who looks like me or has certain credentials, and that's okay. Like I need to live authentically for myself. So releasing other people's expectations for me, even releasing other people's desires for me, what other people want from me as opposed to what I want for myself, like still being authentic in that. And then just, like Angela and both Angela and Donna said, like, what does freedom look like for me? And trying to live as free as possible, which is why my social media handle is MB is free, because I'm trying to remind myself every day that I'm actually free.
That's right, you're free.
Free.
And your freedom frees us all.
I just echo all that. Like, I think the only thing I would add to it is just to say that to be authentic requires me, like, there's a certain way in which I do that naturally, but there is also a kind of introspection that I have to engage myself in to say, whose expectations am I living into now? Whose life am I living into now? Just to make sure that it's mine, that it's the one that God has for me. So I just think, like, right in this particular season, I'm just very aware that, like, I don't automatically keep it real. Like, sometimes I gotta work at it a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I and my sisters have heard me say this before. I really do feel like I bumped into myself when I turned 40. And not to say that I was like faking it, but I think it was almost like there were 15 Lisas who were walking side by side with each other, and they were trying to figure out how to have an agreed upon commitment on who I needed to be. Because, and we'll talk a little about this a little bit later, but there was a lot of pressure to always shapeshift to be the most lovable Lisa, depending on what room I was walking into. And that, like, just starts to do something to you where I think you wake up at age 39 and a half. This is what happened for me. And I was like, I actually am not having fun living somebody else's version of life. I know they wrote out a really pretty third paragraph, but I want to write it in, this particular font. I don't like that font. And anyway, I would say that it was at age 40 that for me, living authentically looks like me actually having to ask myself, Lisa, what do you want? Yes. And oftentimes my answer to what do I want does not look like other people's answers. I mean, my vision and version of success just looks different than other people's vision and versions of success. My vision and versions of flourishing looks very different than other people's visions and versions of flourishing. I can just say right now that when I wake up in the morning and when I put my head down, barring the fact that I'm human and frail, I live a Lisa N. Yaboa life, like very fully. Bold, italicized, and highlighted. It's just, yeah.
With confetti.
Shooting out, yes. Well, I think it's, and Margaret, you kind of teed us up a little bit, because I think sometimes to like bump into yourself, you have to then name the times when you weren't yourself, when you've either been a phantom or shadow of who you really have been called to be. And so this is a vulnerability question, and I don't take it lightly whenever I ask a question that we have to reveal ourselves a little bit, but so you can answer it however you feel, if you want to answer in a general way or specifically. But have you experienced seasons in your life when you weren't true to yourself, and why? And what did that look like in those seasons?
Yeah, I mean, it was in my, I think I was maybe about 25 or 26 when I started like pastoring. And it was just this, just this heightened consciousness of kind of expectations around what people I already didn't meet the expectations, right? Like, because people would come to the church and ask me where the pastor was. So I understood just in my own like embodiment as a young woman, I didn't really meet the expectations, but I did, I think, try to mute myself to an extent, right? I think the church folks was in my closet, which I really don't like. Like I'm considering them before I put on something, even if it's not a Sunday, because they might see me. And they weren't that fashionable, so that was a bad choice. I was careful, as a young woman about like how many different like men in particular I was seen with, right? Because it could have been just lunch, whatever. But like, I know how church people are, right? I know how they talk. So, just being careful to keep up appearances. And I think there were things that I said no to that I might've been interested in, like just for that. And it did not feel good. It felt stifling. I don't know if I could see at the time how much I was doing it, but what amplified it for me was like, I had a situation where there was this person who was, like not in his right mind, but was like spreading like these rumors and lies, and like that was one thing. But the thing about it was, I found out that my church members were repeating it, and like just like ludicrous like things. And I realized, I was like, Shalise, it don't matter. Like if you don't give them something to talk about, they'll just make up something. So you might as well just do what you want to do, and but honestly, I don't know if I could have made that shift if I was still in that environment. Like, I ended up not in that environment anymore, and I was like, okay, you got to shift, right? Because this is a good time for you to do it. You're not living in a glass house right now. You might, in your next ministry job, you'll be in another one again. So just go ahead and make this shift. Live as far into yourself as you can, just to get used to it. And so the next people that encounter you are going to encounter you, and either they can deal with that or not. Sorry, that was long.
No, I just kept on thinking like this mantra we have to tell ourselves, like, they don't really know me, but I know me. Like,
Yeah.
they don't, if this is what they're going to say about me, they really don't know me, but I know me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That similarly, and I'll try to make that a lot long. Mine was just probably like mid-20s, just in that moment in my first relationship, but also my first professional development. Like you're kind of becoming this adult. But if I could name the setup, for me, I am a goal getter. I put my head to it. I get it done. And I was raised in a religion that gave you a lot of goals, right? A lot of goals for holiness, a lot of rules and prescription. And I hit that mess out the water. I did everything right. I was proud about that. And I think for me, I'll set my mind to something and I will be loyal to it and be in it like, this ain't me.
Wow.
But because the loyalty, whether it's God, God said to do this, and I was like, God told me this, and I'm over here like, this ain't God, but I can't, but just the feeling of the expectation being like divine in a really non-good way, like bad theological way, for my own self was like, I have to be loyal to this for whatever reason, even when my spirit would time be like, but she over here Christian, is she free? Like that, like they're okay, they're not, God's not coming for them. But something for me felt like no matter what, I gotta be loyal to this. Or it was when I have said yes to a lot of things and I'm in it and I can feel my body aching. I can feel myself get tired. So my thing is the overworking. So this is kind of this commitment to whatever goal, what I put myself to, whatever setup, whether it's a relationship, a job, a church, whatever it is, that once I know it's not for me. And what the weird part is, it's always for me in the beginning. And I'm very permanent. Like God will give me something and I'm like, yes. And then God's like, now you're growing. And I'm always like, oh, I didn't see myself moving out of this. I set myself up, loyalty, emotion, stay. And so I'm learning that God's like, I'm gonna move you in and out of everything. And that authenticity is almost showing up, like you said, Lisa, showing up knowing this may not be permanent, but I am fully present. But at the time, anytime I had to walk away from something, or whether it was a religious ideal or it was a person, I couldn't walk away. And it wasn't even because I was pride. It was pride, but it was more like I don't want to hurt people's feelings and I don't want to not be what I'm supposed to be and all this stuff. So a lot of mine was somewhere in that mix where now, like you said, I show up kind of like, I'm probably going to leave in 3 years. Or like my current husband, I'll be like, you have to be my sexy boyfriend the rest of my life because we're going to have to keep on moving around. You're going to be married to 5 different women. Like, I don't know who I'll be. And it's just like anybody who's close to me knows Angela's always Angela, but God moves in really different ways all the time. So whenever it's permanent or static or the goals are stuck and,
That's that Aquarian energy. I just had to say that.
Thank you for that affirmation.
Angela, I was just thinking about how you said something that made me think about, I won't go too much into it, but like oftentimes we can get praised for not being ourselves. And so then what happens? Like when you put on a really good show and you're a really great persona and people are just like giving you applause. And so how hard it is then to be like, Snikey, I showed up. This is not the version I want to give you every single day, but people are praising, and it becomes really hard to say, this is, by the way, this is not who I really am.
Can I say one more little thing? This is why I'm afraid of fame or branding a business, because I'm like, the Angela you get is going to be fire, but she's going to change. And any of the followers are going to be like, where's that Angela? I'm like, she's over here with red hair, new followers. So I appreciate that. Like there's a fear of being praised for this one moment of you. And you're like, oh, there's multiple moments,
Yeah, but also, Lisa, one of the things you said, like saying that it encourages me to live more authentically, because I felt like when I was living less authentically, and then people would want me to show up in spaces, right? And I wouldn't want to be there, right? Because I'm like, y'all don't really want me, right? Because you want a version of myself that you saw, but really was more performative than anything else. And so then you put yourself in these like weird situations where you feel even more and more constrained to be somebody else.
So this is so good. So Angela, I'm Cancer sign, right? So I'm water sign. So I'm very fluid. And so I would say that I really connected to what you said. Like there's a part of me that has always felt that, who I am living into my authenticity right now is not going to be what it means for me to live into my authenticity at 50. right? Because I'm evolving, like I'm constantly evolving, I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly changing. And so I'm okay with my authenticity being what it is now. But for the question, which is the moments when you didn't live authentically, I would say that, you know, my childhood was very good and unique. So I've always, I think I've expressed in other times where we've talked, I've always kind of felt like the odd one out. And so that was also experienced at school. So, you know, I was into theater, I was very artistic, I would wear blue lipstick, you know, I would wear crazy things, and people would just be like, oh, that's Donna. And so I feel like in high school, I had experienced so much rejection from my peers that I got to a place where I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to be a loner. And what that progression did for me, though, is my attempt to be authentically who I was not readily accepted, but I had this desire to be accepted, which is a part of our identity. Right. So, you know, so much of what we say about, you know, what others think or want or desire for us is deeply connected to our identity as people called to be in community, called to be in intimate relationship with others. And so this process for me has really been about really starting to take away the myths of how community is supposed to function, so that narrative can be retold for me. Like, no, this is the function of intimate community. This is the function of who you are and how you express yourself. And so community, in some ways, for me early on, became another way to be controlled. Does that make sense? And so I had to detach from the negative parts of community in order to reconnect with community in a healthy way, because community is who we are, right? Communal is who we are. But that anytime we're existing in a world that's broken, the aspects of community can cause harm. And so I started to ask questions. I've always been a person who's asked questions that others were not asking. And so a lot of my moments where I felt that I was lacking in authenticity came in silence. It came when I was sitting in a space and I had a question, but because I didn't have the energy to hear people's pushback, or in that moment I needed to be accepted because I had experienced so much rejection, I just didn't ask the question. And so I withdrew from community, and that made me very inauthentic, because I'm made for community. I'm made to challenge community in some ways. And so it wasn't until I got into my mid to late 20s where I started to meet more people who I could ask questions and have these questions around spirituality, around different modes of religion, around, you know, all of these questions that I couldn't ask in very traditional spaces, or even sometimes in family spaces, where I started to see that, man, I have spent my whole life being quiet or really wrestling with whether or not I should speak up or say or do or challenge, and that made me lacking in authenticity, because I see now that was a voice that needed to be present. Yeah. And I just didn't. And one moment that I think really connects to what you were saying, Lisa, about want, right? Like, what do you want? Shalise, I think you also said, what do you want? I was at a very pivotal moment in my life. I was in my 30s. I was really ready to make a major shift. And so I sat down with two spiritual friends. We were doing some time of prayer. And one of the friends stopped me, because I'm going through all of these scenarios. And she says, but Donna, what do you want? And then I said it very clearly. I said, I want X, Y, and Z. She said, so why is what you want not enough? Like, why is that not reason enough to make that decision? You know, and so that was another connecting point where I realized that it's not, sometimes what I want is aligned with the will of God. Oftentimes is aligned with the will of God. And if it's not going to cause harm, if it is something that will bring me life, then it's going to bring life to others. And how is God not a part? Like, how is it not God's will for us to have life? And so I was completely disconnected from this idea that anything that I want is automatically against God's will. And that was a turning point for me, you know, that no, who I am is also God in me. And what I want can be God in me. And that doesn't mean that I don't have checks and balances and I don't have accountability. I don't have people who can snatch me back, but that is recreated community. Right?
Amen.
That goes back to our intuition conversation. So it's all.
I'm about to fall out on this yoga ball.
Go ahead. Somebody get the blanket.
The
sheet. For me, I don't really have a whole lot to add other than I think when I am not living authentically, or seasons where I wasn't living authentically, I wasn't necessarily aware in those moments that I wasn't living authentically. I think the awareness came for me after the fact. And I think the reason why I wasn't aware is because, to Donna's point, I think at a young age, I learned that who I am is too much, right? So I need to bring in the astrology to this conversation because it's important to me. But, you know, my son is in Leo, and Leo is the only sign that's ruled by the sun. And so people hate Leos. People either hate Leos or they love Leos. Whoever's watching this, just think about the Leos in your life. You probably either hate them or you love them.
Love them.
Love them. Also Leo. Shout out to Leos.
My daddy was a Leo. Love them.
Yes.
Mine too.
But I think, you know, Leo, you all were talking about being mutable and changing. That's part of your astrology as well. But like for Leo is a fixed sign. We are fixed fire, which means that usually some of us, not all of us, but some of us at a young age get really solid in who we are. And we're not really afraid to like shine and be seen. I wasn't always that way, but I think as a young child, I got over my shyness because my parents, you know, kind of made me get in front of people. And I'm grateful for that because I think they saw something in me that has helped me even now. But so as I got older, I realized, oh, I'm different. Like I'm different than other people. I'm different than other Black girls in my school. I'm different than the white kids in my school. I can relate to a lot of people. So I don't really have cliques, even to this day. Like I can move and flow with different crowds of people. But as a young girl, I was very outspoken. I would call things out. I would stand up for what's right. And it was like, you need to be quiet. You need to sit down and be quiet. Now, thankfully, my parents didn't do that to me. But I think a lot of other people in my life just looked at me and said, this girl is too much. And so I think that that has stayed with me throughout my life, even in relationships, you know, with men. I'm more of a directive. I have more of a directive energy. And I'm okay with that. But I think it's like, you know, it's off-putting to some people, right? I'm confident in who I am. But I think in moments where I'm not confident in who I am, or I don't think who I am will be received and appreciated and accepted, I think that's when I find myself not being authentic. And so in terms of like how I've grounded my identity, you know, to be an authentic person means that I just have to be me. And wherever I show up or however I show up in those spaces, I have to also be okay with the fact that not everyone is going to accept me. And so we'll talk about that in a minute, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, this is good. In fact, I'm gonna keep us going. I'm not gonna stop on when I've not been authentic. It'll come back around. You all live like really beautiful lives, like, and I think this is something that's really important for people to know. It's not like, oh, we just want to do videos together and that's why we get together, but like I actually really like Margaret's life. I like Shalisa's life. I love Angela's life. I love Donna's life. I mean, I like the way they live, and we live in a world where oftentimes as soon as we say we love something of somebody else, we start to like compare it over and against our thing. You know, most of us have heard that quote, comparison is the thief of joy. And I would say specifically because Black women, we are voyeured by a system, and our bodies, like, we get mapped these narratives that's always over and against, what people think of as, whether it be femininity, or what does it mean to be like a model woman. I think it can sometimes create these narratives where not only do we start to like police our own lives, we start to kind of police other people's lives and, compare over and against. But I'll say that somehow we have figured out not to make this competition, to not see each other's lives as threats, to not compare. I think there's something about maybe how we're trying to do life together, to make each other courageous for living the lives that we feel like we've been called to live. Why do you think that is, that we're able to do that?
I'll say I'm like I'm the last one to kind of join the group. And when you're the last one to join a group, and there might be others, who knows, you come into a setup situation. So I was like, oh my God, I admire these women, but you're all like, but are they crazy underneath all this? Like, you don't know. So when I got here, I'm like, wow, they're legit. Like, this is who they say they are. And I now know why, I found my way into this group. All that to say, immediately, I've been looking in my mind, I'm like, I know we are emotionally intelligent and secure. And that is so hard. We're trained as people, as Black women, to be really good at a lot of stuff. No one's trained to be emotionally intelligent and secure emotionally. That's just something you have to find. And so I do think all of us have done that work, whether it's we dealt with our pains, we dealt with our traumas, or we at least know the areas that we haven't. And so if that jumps out, we're able to name it and know like what's our stuff and other people's stuff. That is just like, that I don't find often. But really what Margaret, that kind of what you constantly say around, be you, even if others is doing it, is so rooted in an abundance, like theology or theory versus scarcity. And I feel like every one of you all live out this abundance, kind of like the freedom of God to be have abundant life in a way that's so authentic that when somebody gets something or somebody reaches some sort of goal that I know I have, I'm like, well, this is great. This means I'm coming, or them being successful. Doesn't mean like I get the hookup. It just means that the Spirit is you all encourage me every time. You gotta do you, go get your, kind of feeling. So I just always feel like there's so much abundance that I don't feel the need to, well, you all never held back with me because I was new. So, new girl comes in and was like, well, who's this? What's she gonna do? Who's she gonna, but it's almost like, oh, come in here. We're gonna put you on here. And when I felt that, it was like, now I can also just give because there's no scarcity. Those are the two things that hit immediately.
I think there's something that's compelling to me about this group, because I'll say, me being the only one that's not clergy, even though y'all love to
the bishop,
You
the bishop, Margaret.
You want me to hold your Bible, your sword?
Okay, we're gonna have to ordain you.
Anyway, I think the name of this group, the name that we came up with for the group, to me speaks to the secret sauce. Like, we're grown ass women, we are the emotional intelligence, absolutely, the emotional security, the stability, we're doing our work, like all the things that make you grown, not just paying your bills and not just taking care of yourself or your ability to take care of other people, but like, do you love yourself? Do you take care of yourself? Do you have healthy relationships with other women? Do you support other women? Not just women, but do you support people? Do you have a communal perspective of, relationships, or is it about competition? Are you confident in who you are? Like, I think those are all the things that make a woman a grown-ass woman. And so I think, when I think about y'all and I think about myself, I see us doing the work every day to like be our best selves and to be as whole as we can be for ourselves and for other people. And there's no way that if you're doing your own work to be whole, there's no way that you can be with other people who are also doing their work like that's going to be impactful. Like I couldn't be in this group and not do my work. One, like y'all would be like, "Now, sis, what's going on with you?" There will be some accountability, and that also is why so many people, I think, shy away from relationships like this. You know, close relationships that are built on more than just social interaction, but like true sisterhood, true connection, because there's going to be some accountability. I can't show up acting crazy with all this sideways energy because I know y'all are going to be like, you need some help. Come on, let's come together. Let's come together so we can lay hands on this one.
Yes, I know you're Leo, but you shot at all kinds of stuff. No.
Yeah.
No.
So someone once said that comparison is really a sign of self-contempt.
Come on, Donna. Y'all know what you about to do. Go ahead and do it.
You know, and so this whole idea of comparison, and don't get me wrong, like we learn it early. Like we cannot ignore, like there are some trainings that I do where I will show a clip from Sesame Street. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things does not belong here. Like it, you know, it is designed innocently to teach kids differences, but it is implanting through language a strong form of comparison that makes you, if you are different in any way, the one that doesn't belong, okay? The one that has to shift and change, right? And so I'm answering the question.
You are.
We believe you.
So
This is what we call helicopter
We're
preaching.
gonna stay with you because we know you're gonna bless us.
Taking us on.
I know where you're going. It's okay. It's okay. Here, this is me with the go. Come on, Donna.
yes. So this form of self-contempt where I'm constantly having to compare, it means that someone else is the standard. But the truth of the matter is people are not the standard.
Girl.
Right? You know, people are not the standard. And so if that's not my standard, then we have to reorient ourselves to how we have unlearned what we've learned to relearn what we need to learn. And so when we start talking about this process of emotional maturity and spiritual maturity, we're talking about like these intentional moments at which, you know, like I hit a place where I said, I don't like how it feels to always feel like I'm lacking or not enough. I don't like how it feels to feel like I'm living in this body and that this body is lacking in some way. And that's when I started to actually do more reading around Buddhism and all these things and started to realize that I'm the only one who has to live inside this body. And since no one else but God can enter this body with me, right? In terms of like existence, like being in an existence, what I have power over is how I hold myself, how I love myself, how I be with myself. And so I began to realize how I would again, back to my last conversation, I would stray away from community. I would stray away from community because my stomach would literally turn in circles of other, particularly clergy women, because it was always conversations about what I've done, what I'm doing, where I've preached, and I would just withdraw. Like I wouldn't go to conferences, I wouldn't do anything. And I realized, I said, you know what? I have got to create my own spaces. So everywhere I've moved, I said, I have prayed. And this prayer was not my first prayer. I believe that the prayers that brought me to a space like this started with my husband. Okay. So Dedrick and I have been together for 20 years. And I would say about 4 or 5 years in, he was like, Donna, like you got a lot of people that consider you friends, but you don't have like your core group. I'm like, and I would explain it. He would walk me through it. He said, I'm gonna start praying. He started praying for me to have a space like this, right? And so he started to press me to start to reach out to people, to connect with the people who I wanted to be my people, right? You can't do this. I love him too, child. You can't do this with everybody. You all, this is my inner circle. Like, this is Jesus had the three, then he had the disciples, then he had the masses. This is my three. Y'all are my three. Like, this is the piece where we are so core, like our core is so connected in love that any other differences that we have only sharpen us. But this was not something that just haphazardly happened. Right? It was, all of my sisters have already named, we did our work, but I would say this was prayed up. It was intentional. There was an inviting in. And then there is this recommitment, at least on my end, there's this recommitment that I prioritize the women in this group. I prioritize y'all. Like, when I say that you all are my sisters, like, I mean that, because I do not take it lightly that I have 4 core people in my life who, for whom I am not invisible. I do not have to put on airs, right? I can just be honest. I can disagree, and it won't be like, oh my God, we ain't
gonna cancel you.
That's exactly right. You're not gonna cancel me. You're not gonna cancel me out. And so what this group has done for me, it has affirmed for me love and not self-contempt. It has said to me that it's okay for you to be who you are, because I am in the presence of other people who have accepted that it's okay for them to be who they are. Right there. I mean, comparison never even comes up in my mind in this space, because there's no expectation that who we fully are and who we fully bring ourselves to this space. That is what is expected in this space, is that we bring our full selves. And that who I am in this space is what my sisters need, just like who my sisters are in this space. They're who I need.
Amen. Girl, about the club shout. Pew, 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 pew.
Where's my air horn?
While you get your air horn, Margaret, I just feel like I just want to say, while you were talking, Donna, I kept on. Let me tell you what the nagging thought that I had is that there are people who might watch this and say, I wish I had a 4. And, I can't promise that, that may happen the way it happened for us, but I do want to just say, I want to be committed to calling that forth for other people.
Amen.
I just want to say that, because I think we do have a great gift. It's not a gift to be hoarded. And so maybe someone will be listening or watching and think, how can I become like the 4, like the 4, or whatever it is. But I don't want to take it lightly that this isn't everyone's reality.
It's not. And that's why I say, if this is what you desire, and I think there's a part of all of us who desire it, pray, like, ask for it, like, to know that you are worthy of it. Pray for it, and then what are the ways that you can invite people you do trust into your life to walk with you? Because a lot of this is my experience, right? It's about how I experience the world. That's what drew me to you all. It's about the work that I've done and how I experience the world. And so I would say, with any disappointment, anywhere in our life, there's a gap in what we desire. Like, there's a gap in unmet desires. It's all about how we hold it and how are we inviting God or others into that space that we can trust, who can help us hold it differently so that our joy isn't snatched.
Amen to that.
Nobody snatch your joy.
Don't let nobody snatch
your joy. That's an update. That's an update to steal your joy. Don't let nobody snatch that.
But I get it. It is real. Like, unmet desires is real. It is real. But that is the reality of life. The question is, how do we walk in and live amid unmet desires?
And I mean, and also, like Lisa, like we didn't have it for a while, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, until recently. But I think from what Angela was saying earlier, I think what attracts us to one another is our authenticity, right? So our willingness to be authentic in whatever spaces, even if they didn't feel like spaces that would fully accept us as that, like, is what allowed us to see each other for who we were and be kind of, you know, attracted to that and want to reach out, right, for deeper relationship. So
there's one more thing I think I should probably say in this space about this group. Just for people who may be interested, we do set times where we meet regularly, right? So we were meeting just once a month, over lunch, wherever. But if things come up where we cannot connect, or one of us can't connect, there isn't this, oh my gosh, you're not committed. It's none of that, you know, and there's no one person who kind of leads. And so it's this idea of, oh, y'all, we have been disconnected for a while. Can we get together? And then the third piece is we text all day.
Yeah.
Right?
Group text. Woo.
We connect more through group text than we do with anything else. And so you might be surprised. You may already have your person or your two people.
yeah.
Because it's what I'm saying is there isn't a lot of pressure around, oh my God, what does commitment look like? And how do you have to show up for me? No, we name a need and the sisters rise, right? Or we have a celebration and we name it. Like it is free of all these heavy expectations that people often place on what it means to have good, holy, healthy friendship. Like it's free flowing.
Yeah. And you know what I thought about, Donna, because like when you said, because like sometimes you already have it, like sometimes we do, and like I love the church, but you know, I know them well, you know, but like in church spaces, they'll be like, but you got to have these Christian friends, right, to hold you accountable in this particular way. And I'm like, I don't like them. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, so sometimes, and I mean, I know y'all Christian and everything, but like, but sometimes that's when like you already got it, but they don't look like the group that like somebody told you like your friend group was supposed to look like.
Yeah, that's real.
Yes. Or they may not be just like you know, and I think that's the other part too. Like Donna was speaking to that earlier. Like we're all very different people. So, and that helps. It makes it work.
That's it.
I say that the secret sauce is, I think one of the things that I first began to realize is that being a part of this group was not me having to become anybody's mini-me. And it's been very rare in my life that I've been like a part of something where people didn't want to like then put you in a particular package. It's almost like part of me bringing my whole story here was you also wanted to like unleash, leverage, be fulcrums for my story versus how can you begin to like shift, take some parts off of it. And I've just come to this realization when it comes to me occupying my life and living my life authentically, how I choose people who I'm going to let them hold my story, my dreams, my whatever, is if I have to write a script in my head when I'm in their presence, if I have to package my life differently for them to gloss over to say yes or no, that's how I know. If I say no to my life so that you can say yes to me,
That ain't God.
That's not gonna work.
That ain't God.
That ain't God.
That ain't God. Well, and when you said that, I was like, oh, thank you. I was that girl for so long, and I haven't been around it for so long. So I'm like, wow, praise report. You seek approval, and it's usually because I admire you, right? You are doing something that I think is dope, and so I'm like, do you like me? You know? And I'll be honest, when I got pulled in the group, I was like, wow, these are clergy women / bishops. Doing it, and that's right, doing it, and I'm like, my initial reaction was like, well, do I fit in, you know? And Shalice invited me, I didn't know what to wear, you know, you don't know nothing, and I show up and it was just like, wow, like I don't have to get approval in that way. And I think that's still, even though I'm grown, I still have that in you, but you all didn't do it. And so I love that idea of like, if you have to get approval, if you have to like fit in, I would have done it. Like in this skin, I would have still did it with you all. And the environment was like, don't do that. That's not what it's like. So I just really appreciate you naming that.
We need to know if we like you. Thanks.
So this is so we can round out our conversation. there's this really beautiful quote by Saint Maya Angelou, who says that you only are free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place, no place at all. And I know her intention was not to say that like that belonging doesn't matter, or that we're trying to be kind of loners in this world, but that part of understanding life in community is like actually having, I could say this, a love affair with your own life. Like you belong to yourself. Donna, you said that, like you know, at the end of the day, I mean, you can't divorce yourself from yourself. And people who are divorced from themselves don't live a congruent or integrated life. There's always a sadness about that when the 15 Lisas are quarreling because they can't belong to one another. I feel like we have like an obligation to ourselves to live our lives, to claim our stories, whatever however you want to understand being yourself. What are the practices that you engage to ensure you hold on to your life? Or what are the practices you engage when you need to get your life back, when you're no longer at home in yourself or in your story?
I'll jump in because I'm over here just like, oh, this is beautiful. You had said it earlier, I think, Shalise, like being authentic everywhere. So I show up just live. And what happens is usually you're kind of rejected, or just I actually don't think rejection is what I feel anymore, because I do think that we are made in the image of God. And when God shows up, people are like, wow, like they're taken back whether they like it or not. And I think every time I'm fully the God that God made me to be, it's like, it's abrasive in a beautiful way. So I don't feel rejected. I feel like some people, like you said, they try to change you. When I fully show up, that's one of the practices. Then I watch what people do. And if the environment moves to change me, I leave immediately. That is kind of like my commitment to myself. I quit, I move, whatever it is, because like I said, if I stay too long, I'll start performing. So I feel like my litmus test is like you were talking about, I was my full self first and then I got my next job. Now any situation I try to just be my full self. Sometimes, I'm like, oh, I probably shouldn't have been that full, but it's like I err on that side. And then I watch to see how people respond. And if people, even if people can't love it, but they don't change it or degrade it, I stay. And that's been super helpful. The other last thing is my people around me in my life. I prioritize the people who are authentic. Like, I love how you said, and my husband, he's my saving grace. He is so authentic in ways that I can't take him all these places. But I mean, he's a natural check. So the people closest to me have to be the furthest away from performative, which sometimes in my circle, people kind of judge you because they're like, were you with them? And I'm like, yep. Like my closest folk are like outliers because they keep me like, even just in who they are. And so I won't say it's intentional, but I feel more comfortable now being in those spaces because I know they're my anchors, because I will always perform. I mean, that's just like my personality in that way. So it's very close to who I'm around.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's a number of things, and I'll be quick. One, it is a withdrawal. So when I kind of reach that point where I'm like, ooh, I can't, I'm overthinking things, I'm going in too many directions, I have to withdraw. I have to have rest. I have to get space. I have to be away from people. So most of the time it's because I'm in the proximity of so many different people and energies is just too much. I need to withdraw. So that's one practice. Second thing is, I recently had a conversation with someone I love very deeply, who loves me, who says to me, Donna, you spend a lot of time praying for and talking about how you want the work that you do to produce pathways and conduits to healing. And he said to me, he says, I feel like you spend a lot of time praying and talking about those things and thinking about those things rather than trusting that the gifts and the skills that God has given you are gifts and skills of healing, and that what you do in authenticity are going to be conduits of healing. So you let God do the healing and you just trust that the work that you do already has a healing edge to it. And I say that, you know, for me, that has now become a mantra for me, that I wasn't realizing how often I was thinking about over and over and over in my head about how I was showing up in a space, really because it was connected to a desire that I have that could make me hold back a part of who I am, because I was overthinking it, to just trust the gifts that God has given me. And so I have this practice now over the last month. It's a new practice of when I move into that space of letting it be a marker to move out and say, no, just trust that God has called you to this, trust that God is at work, and you just be authentic and honest in how you serve and or teach and or are present, right? So it's not questioning how God has gifted me, to just trust and confidence that those gifts are there and that God is at work in those gifts. And I would say the third thing is also a mantra that comes from a Buddhist monk book I was reading. I don't know what book it is, sorry y'all. It was a book years ago where it was similar to Maya Angelou. He said, if you take a step and you feel like you're not at home, he says, don't move again until you remind yourself or realize that everywhere you step on this earth is home. Like you belong everywhere you put your foot. And that resonated with me. He also said in that book, the kingdom of God is now or never, right? So it's either now or it's never. And so this idea, again, of me in my Black feminine body, being taught consciously and unconsciously to not take up space, to be reminded that this earth is my home, right? That I am connected to the earth, that there is nowhere I move that lines and boundaries of geography or all these lines and boundaries that have been created by societies and hierarchies are not lines and boundaries of my creator. And that there is no ownership in the way that people want to claim ownership. That it's a mantra and a reminder that where I am, I belong. So when I start to feel like I don't fit or I don't belong, I have been very intentional about praying. Please bring to my memory this truth that I belong everywhere I go. Absolutely. That I have a right to take up space wherever I am because my body is created to take up space. My gifts are created to take up space. And so for me, it's a lot of mantras, reminders, and then it's rest, the pulling back when I feel like I'm just off my element.
Yeah, like I was trying to think really deep when you were like, what are the practices, right? Like just something like really different, and just Donna reminded me that like really it's just like kind of prayer, you know what I'm saying? Like I have to spend time with my creator, and the one who fashioned me with purpose in order to stay connected to who I am supposed to be in this world. And so I need that time. I need times of solitude, you know, in order to facilitate at least that conversation, even if answers come, you know, in other spaces. But that idea of connection that Donna was just talking about, you know, really resonated with me, because I think I've been feeling just a little disconnected, right? Because there's sometimes when these differences maybe are more like highlighted than others. And I had an opportunity to share that when I don't always like feel maybe connected with maybe kind of like a prevailing narrative in the world, or a way in which I feel like people are kind of like going or committed. If I don't feel fully connected in there, and that way, I reach out to kind of a connection in God's like fuller story, right? So the scripture comes to mind that, you know, since we are surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, right? So if I can't feel connected to like my peers, I'm connected to my grandmother, who I know in this story that God is writing for humanity, who I know made space for me to be where I am. even as a woman in ministry, right? And so I can connect to that legacy, that historical legacy, and then I can also connect to like, who am I making space for, you know, as well, that's coming after me in the future. And that is a reminder that, like, for me, that like I have purpose here, even if it doesn't look exactly like the person who's standing to my left and my right. But God created me intentionally for purpose. God made room for me to be able to like really literally carved out. I just see this track, right? When I hear that scripture, literally carved out this lane for me to be able to run. So I do belong here, and I can feel confident in running the race that I feel called to, even if it doesn't look like that of other people.
I think I'll just add that for me, my practices really focus on kind of two things. One is just an acceptance that I am who I am. And so I do that through affirmations. I think there are times where I'm very confident in just being who I am in certain spaces. But then when I get there and I see, or even just in friendships, I see the way people react to things or respond to things. And sometimes I feel like, I wonder why I don't feel that way. I mean, that happens to me often. Like, I'm someone who doesn't necessarily emote very often. And so I've ridiculed that within myself. It's like, I wish I were more emotive, you know, with my feelings. It's not that I don't have feelings. It's just that I don't really emote in the ways
I
that other
understand
people.
you, Margaret.
Yeah. And so sometimes when I'm around people who do, it's like, man, I wonder why I'm not like that, you know, just comparison, right? And so affirmations for me has been a practice that I've leaned heavily into, just naming who I am, accepting it, and allowing that to be okay. And then I think the second practice revolves around clearing, you know, clearing out other people's voices, clearing out other people's desires, especially because I think, and this is a beautiful thing that I'm blessed by, is that people see me and they see something in me. And so because of what they see, they want a certain thing for me. And sometimes that thing that they want doesn't necessarily align with what I want. So, but they're good things, right? So then you start questioning, well, why don't I want those things? And I just don't. And so I think I've learned to accept that, like, there's some things in my life that I don't necessarily desire, and that's okay. And it's also okay for people to want things for me. But at the end of the day, I have to kind of clear that out and live the life that I want to live. And so I'll try to write down certain things, and I'll burn the paper, you know, or I'll tear it up, or I'll go and put my feet in the dirt. You know, I'll meditate, I'll pray, and just ask God to like clear those voices out so that I can be comfortable in who I know I am, and doing what I know I'm here to do. And that it doesn't always fit into a certain box, you know, that there are lots of different boxes that I can check, and all of those things will kind of stand alone, and that's okay. So I know that was kind of vague, but I was trying to make it succinct.
Check.
I was just going to say, I think that I'm a person who keeps myself honest with examination questions, and those examination questions shift during different seasons of my life. So when I was on sabbatical, my examination question every single morning was, Lisa, what do you want? And I needed to like emphasize the you, and the day would show me what I deeply wanted to, who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. And so, you know, Margaret and others know this. I mean, I would sometimes drive around Raleigh in a bathing suit because I'm like, I want to do that. Like, that just seems nice to me right now. Or, and I know that seems small. That might seem like a small, insignificant thing, but if you feel like your life has always been kind of like viewed, and you know, like you're on this big stage, and when you start to say, I am the production manager, I wrote the script, I also did the wardrobe, the hair, there's something really freeing about that. And so that's one of my examination questions. And the other is going to sound a little bit morbid, but I will sometimes, when I get like start to overthink a decision, it could be about my hair, it could be about something I want to do with work. I will ask myself when I look back over my days, will I be disappointed that I didn't do that thing?
Yeah.
For a false narrative, for all the what ifs or whatever, that I didn't wear that one outfit to Food Lion because will I be disappointed in myself? And so it keeps me.
You can wear your swimsuit to Food Lion.
I wish you would have worn it today.
Someone might buy me some groceries.
Okay.
And I'll say it's not morbid because you're checking yourself with yourself.
Yeah.
Hey, are you gonna be happy with this? Which is like a relationship with self in a way that it's not supposed to, if I don't, but it's like, will you be okay? I'm talking to myself. If I don't, I love that. Like, it's a check-in. And your self's like, no, I'm not gonna be okay.
Anyway, I know we've been talking for a while, and I'm just grateful to you all. Like I said, I'm very much compelled by your lives. You live lives that, as a dear friend would say, are worth imitating, and yet you make space for us all to be courageous enough to live the lives that we've been called to live. And I think that's just the most beautiful thing ever. To have courage to live your life means to live the life from the heart. But for it to be embodied in the body. And I'm just grateful. Thank you all for sharing.
Before we go. Oh no.
The horn.
That's my favorite thing. If I ever head to church, that's gonna be the organ.
Amen. Tambourines and air horns all day.